Persona 5 Royal has a total of 23 different Arcanas, and I will try to beat the entire game using only a single one of them per playthrough. Welcome to the 6th episode of the Persona 5 Royal Arcana Challenge. After beating the game with our Shogi Queen Hifumi's Star Arcana in the previous installment in the series, we are back for one more solo Joker Arcana, and just like every time, I let you guys decide on which Arcana you want to see next. And since you're watching this right now, you already know that this time around, we're going for Gun Daddy Iwai's Confidant as we try to beat the game using only the Hanged Man.
You should be grateful.
But before we look into our Persona options for the Arcana, let's quickly recap the rules again. We're only allowed to use the Hanged Man persona during battles, fusion, electric chair, gallows, or even during a hold-up when it comes to persona or item negotiation, with the exception being treasure demons to rank persona of an Arcana up or down. We are only allowed to use Joker since there are no party members of the Hanged Man, and we're only allowed to rank up Iwai, and obviously all Arcanas that unlock and or progress automatically. Maruki as always is the exception here since we need to max his Confidant to unlock the Royal exclusive content later. Until we get access to the first persona of the Hanged Man, only Arsene may be used. And of course, we have the classic run rules like having the difficulty on hard, banning DLC personas, as well as no new game plus. For the next Arcana run, I'm planning to go for another party member since we haven't had one of those in a while, so let me know in the comments which one you want to see coming up next time. As always, I'm writing this as I go through the run, which officially starts once we get to spend our time freely after getting through the Belphegor battle. With all that being said, let's get going. We start the game, select our difficulty, and get to name our protagonist. And because the main theme of this Arcana challenge is going to be gun related when it comes to our Confidant, I figured that Danny DeVito would be fitting for Joker, considering that we're going to start blasting once we can start customizing our guns. And while we got the opening cutscenes running in the background, let's take a quick look into the Hanged Man personas and what kind of options we're going to get in this run. The Hanged Man is one of the few Arcanas which have neither advanced fusions nor DLC personas, so with the exception of the Treasure Demon, we will get access to every single persona of the Arcana. We will go into detail on each of them once we get access to them, so I would say we skip forward to the point where we can use our time freely and head back into the game. We stop by the airsoft shop to pay our future number 1 Confidant a visit, and also upgrade our equipment, mostly our gun. Also here is a gentle reminder that we are allowed to use the free DLC pack for the Arcana challenges. People in the comments regularly ask where the big early game money comes from. The DLC comes with some very useful accessories, items, and also 100,000 yen, though to be honest, I get the most use out of it with the outfits to switch up the battle music, because while the OST of the game is really good, there is only so much of the default battle theme you can listen to without going insane. Speaking of which, once we head back into the palace, we switch our outfit to the Gekkokan High uniform, not only because I'm a big sucker for the Persona 3 OST in general, but I also figured that this is the outfit that fits the Hanged Man Arcana the best, considering Persona 3's entire shtick is sticking a gun into your face and pulling the trigger. But before we drift into too much off topics, let's focus on the actual challenge. The beginning of Kamoshida's castle is basically the same as in the majority of other solo Arcana runs for now. We only have Arsene to start off, and therefore have rather limited options. Since we are allowed to fuse the first persona of an Arcana if we cannot acquire it through negotiation, we grab a Mandrake on the way as it's the main ingredient for the first Hanged Man persona later on. We also run past a lot of early game shadows and only start grinding once we get to the point where we can find Barif, who gives a total of 60 experience for each battle, which is huge for this part of the game. For the Archangel fight, we have learned in previous Arcana runs that the easiest way to get through the boss is just to constantly cleave with Joker. The enemy will usually target all other party members first before actually getting to Joker, and by the time he's the only party member left, the enemy is basically down, and we have no issues winning the battle. Up next we got the 2 battles against the Eligors coming up, and this one is always a bit of a lottery. We are relying on Arsene's Dream Needle here to put the enemies to sleep, but obviously this is not a guaranteed hit, and if the sleep status doesn't proc, well, there is a decent chance that the enemy will one-shot Joker with a nice double fangs. We only ever had one solo Joker Arcana so far where we had enough luck to get through both Eligor battles on the first attempt, and while the first Eligor wiped us twice, We got enough luck on the following attempt to get through both battles without any further issues. One big difference compared to a lot of other solo Joker Arcana rounds so far is that we're about to unlock the first Hanged Man persona already. Once we hit level 9, we head into the Velvet Room to fuse ourselves a Huapo, so I would say we take a quick look at it. Huapo has a good magic stat and decent agility. Getting access to Dormina is definitely a plus considering how useful status elements can be against a lot of enemies, though I am worried when you look at its defensive attributes. Having 2 weaknesses and starting off with only 4 endurance is not necessarily the most, so we might have to be careful in order to not get wiped too quickly. Because of this, I would say we put it to the test immediately as we head into the Palace's Willseed Gatekeeper battle against Minimara. Thanks to Dormina, we can easily put the enemy to sleep, though unfortunately it resists fire attacks, so Archie is not really going to be doing a lot of damage. Because of this, our main strategy is going to sleep the enemy, and then follow it up with a regular attack, hoping to additionally knock down the enemy to get a second attack in right after. Unfortunately, the enemy targets Shoko with Assault Dive a few turns later, and with Huapo's low endurance, this is basically a one-shot, so we game over here. For attempt number 2, I went with stun guns to shock the enemy, but since we don't have any physical skills to hit technical damage off of, this doesn't really do a lot of damage either. Eventually we switch over to freeze sprays to freeze the enemy, and then hit technical damage with a regular physical attack, and while this may not be the most ideal strategy either, it worked out well enough to get the enemy down and retrieve the last will seed. The diorama on the accessory is nice, but the real benefit on it is the additional Tarokaja that it comes with once we bring it to Chosen Mementos later on. With that, we're done in Kamoshida's palace, but with Choka still on level 9, there is no way we can get through Kamoshida just yet. Because of this, we stay in the palace a little longer to grind more Barifs to level both Joker and Huapo up some more. From past solo Arcana runs, level 12 on Joker should be enough, and at the same time we're also safe scumming during level ups on Huapo to make sure we get a couple of points into endurance to get her a bit more bulk. Grinding on Barif overall is not that big of an issue thanks to Dormina, but each fight takes a while due to our low HP and the enemy regenerating its HP during sleep, so it's quite a bit until we hit level 12 and are done for now. Back in the real world, we head to the clinic to buy some Recover 100s. With Huapo's below average endurance, I figured we would need quite some healings, so we buy a total of 41 and then head to the laundromat to wash the armor we acquired in the dungeon. Once we're all set up, we send the calling card and then head back into the palace for the first major boss fight of the challenge. The strategy for the battle is relatively simple. We just throw Archies at Kamoshida and hope that the rest of the party survives as long as possible. For the first 2 phases, we still need them as meat shields, so we hope for some lucky volleyball assaults, while Choka is trying to get the boss's HP down. If Choka himself gets low on HP, we throw our Recover 100 and then continue on. When Kamoshida switches into phase 2, Ryuji is already down and An only has 15 HP left, so we need to try and break the trophy quickly before the incoming damage becomes overwhelming. Unfortunately, both An and Morgana get wiped soon after, so this looks like it may be a wipe. Like mentioned earlier though, Huapo has good early agility, so there is a decent chance the Joker can dodge attacks every once in a while, which helps tremendously when it comes to not having to heal every turn, and we actually managed to take the trophy down in time. We heal up to survive the golden spike, and manage to even dodge it, and once we put Shiho down as well, we are in the last phase of the battle. At this point, Kamoshida will only spam Golden Knife, which does around 50 damage, so we basically heal and attack every other turn with Archie until Choka's SP run out. The occasional dodges help getting more attacks in per healing cycle, so we continue on throwing out attacks while healing in between, and after literally using the last Recover 100, we managed to take Kamoshida down and complete the first major palace of the game. We could not have timed this any better. Thanks to the semi-regular dodges, we were able to get through the fight without having to use any of the beats we got, which is good because I'm sure we will need quite a few of them for future fights. That being said, we have the first downtime of the game now, and there are actually a couple of things we want to do. During the day, we mostly go study in the library. Until Kamoshida confesses, this gives us points into both knowledge and guts, which we both need. If you watched previous Arcana challenges, you know that we need knowledge to get the exam rewards from Sojiro later on, and we need max proficiency to max our technical rank. In the Hanged Man run though, we also need guts since it's a requirement to start and max Iwai's confidant. Since we need guts at rank 4 to even start it off, this will still take a while, but might as well use the opportunity to get both stats up, considering there aren't a lot of useful things we can do during daytime anyways. During evening hours, we either craft some infiltration tools to get our proficiency up, or work out in Choka's room to increase Choka's max HP. Solo runs often require a big HP pool on Choka to tank lots of enemy attacks, so this is definitely going to be our priority. On Sundays, we usually go to the batting cages to further get our proficiency up, since the school is closed and the Dyna as well as the Big Bang challenge for further gut points are not available just yet. After a few days, Kamoshida confesses his crimes, we celebrate our victory and get to name our party. And since this is a gun-related challenge, we once again go for the NRAS name here to not only fit the narrative of the challenge, but also to pay a little tribute to the gun-only challenge I've done a couple of years ago, which is still by far the most popular video on my entire channel, slowly inching towards the 1 million view mark. With the guts bonus in the school library now gone, we usually spend our daytime in the Dyna where we can get both knowledge and guts by ordering a surprise sando. Not too long after, we get our introduction to Mementos where we have to battle an Obarian. This is another fight where the sleep comes in very handy. Since Obarian does not resist fire attacks, we can hit nice technical damage off of it as well. Another option is to use a stun gun to hit the enemy's weakness, and then follow up with another Archie to deal a total of roughly 130 damage each turn. This works out pretty well, and it's only a couple of turns until the enemy is already down again. Back in the real world, we unlock Maruki's confidant shortly afterwards, and with Yusuke bursting onto the scene a couple of days later, we are ready to head into the second palace soon after. There isn't really much to say about this one. We're trying to mostly battle enemy formations with disaster shadows in them since those are the easiest to get through quickly, considering we don't have many choices when it comes to elemental damage at the moment with Huapo only knowing fire attacks. We grab the first treasure demon of the game shortly afterwards, and with Choka already being level 14 here, this means we can now get the second Hanged Man persona in Inugami, so let's take another quick look at it. Inugami is more physically focused, learning both regular physical attacks as well as gun attacks with Dream Needle. With it also knowing gun, fire, as well as curse while only being weak to wind, this is definitely quite the upgrade over Huapo. With the treasure demon used during fusion, we can also carry all kinds of elemental spells over, which is going to make dungeon progression much easier, since we got much more options now when it comes to hitting a weakness. Once we hit level 15, we reach the barrier, so we have to leave the palace for now and come back on the following day when An empties her entire closet in Yusuke's room. In the meantime, we need to battle Nue, and with Archie and Huapo, this is luckily not a big issue as the mini-boss is weak against fire attacks. A couple of Archies are enough to beat the enemy, and once An and Yusuke join the rest of the party in the palace, Yusuke awakens to his persona, and we have to battle Ippon and a couple of Kappa Tengus next. The Kappa Tengus are weak against both Ice and Bless, and since we were able to carry over Makua from Treasure Demon during fusion, we can hit all the ads for a big weakness hit and wipe them on the one more during the very first turn already. Ippon itself has no weakness, but with a buffed Giant Slice we can still deal good damage to the enemy. After reapplying Tarukaja, we get a lucky double crit with Inugami, and that's all we need to put the enemy down. This is a battle where we had a lot of issues in previous Arcana challenges, but the combination of Makua and the crit physical hits made quick work of the enemies. Before we head back into the palace though, we make a quick detour into Mementos to hit up Chose to upgrade the will seed accessory we got in Kamoshida's palace earlier. Like mentioned before, the Ring of Lust gets an extra Tarukaja added to its diorama, which makes it an incredibly useful accessory, so we want to make sure to get it early into the challenge. We also go through the first couple of open requests here, and this is where I would like to give a huge shoutouts and a big FU to this Jack Frost right here. This is usually a rather easy battle, but for some reason I kept getting the worst luck possible here. Lucky Punch kept critting over and over again, which the enemy usually follows up with Stomach Blow, an attack that you can't even get yourself and that literally only 2 Mementos request bosses in the entire game even have. Either way, this was ridiculously annoying and it took me like 20 minutes to get through this fight that usually shouldn't last longer than 3 to 4 turns. Once we finally made it though, we just continue on until we hit the last accessible floor, and then leave Mementos only to head back into the palace on the following day. The first mini-boss here is a Kurama Tengu, who is accompanied by 2 Kappa Tengus. Similar to the Ippondatra battle before, we open up by hitting the ad's weakness with Makua, then stun the mini-boss with our first customized gun, and then follow up with another Makua to wipe them. Once the shock wears off, the mini-boss will summon another Kappa Tengu, but with another double Makua, we are already done again and can continue on. The second mini-boss battle is against 3 Makami, which are weak to electricity, so with Masio in possession, we make quick work of the enemies once again, although we did get lucky with the shock proc here since we otherwise might have gotten wiped. With that, the only thing remaining is the Will Seed Gatekeeper battle against Arahabaki, and as you probably know by now, this is definitely one of the trickiest early game battles, and considering we can still use a couple of levels anyways, I wanted to grind a bit before. The easiest way to do so is by battling the strong shadow of the palace in Shikiuchi. Since it nulls both physical and gun attacks as well as blast and curse, it's usually a pain to get down, even more so because of its strong attack, but in this Arcana run, we don't have that issue at all because with Inogami, we are literally invincible. Shikiuchi's only attacking move is Double Shot, and since Inogami nulls gun attacks, the enemy literally cannot hurt us. Because of this, we can take as much time as we want taking it down without ever having to worry about potentially getting wiped. Once we got a couple of Shikiuchis down, we head towards the Will Seed Gatekeeper of this palace in Arahabaki. While it is weak to both wind and nuke damage, we want to try to inflict some kind of technical hit on it to get it down faster, since the battle gets much more dangerous the longer it goes on. We hit a weakness hit and then try to shock the enemy, but once the status wears off, it can be over quite quickly. We do have Champions Cup to not only heal but also buff our attack, but a Brain Check combined with a Mob Seal usually deals huge damage, unless we manage to dodge it. Since the shock didn't work so well, we switch over to Freeze Sprays and combo them with Giant Slice to ignore the enemy's physical affinities. Unfortunately, we get brainwashed again, then buff the enemy's attack, and needless to say, yeah, the follow-up Mob Seal easily one-shots us. On the second attempt, we switch over to Molotov Cocktails to inflict burn on the enemy. While this doesn't actively increase our damage, the boss will take a decent amount of burn damage after every attack, which definitely helps. Since Arahabaki can still attack in this state, we usually knock down the enemy first with Mafrai, and then guard on the one more in order to prevent potential status ailments. Unfortunately, we once again get brainwashed after having to heal, and then get mob sealed out of our boots. It does feel like this is the strategy to go for here though, so we continue on with this, and on attempt number 3, we're able to take the boss down and retrieve the last will seed. And while we're already at it, if you enjoy the Arcana series and want to see more of them, please subscribe if you haven't already. I'm usually not that big on stuff like that, but it does seem to help the channel out overall, so thanks to everybody who's watching this right now. You guys are the best. With that out of the way, we are technically done here now, but we will stay in the palace a little longer to grind them some more Shikiuchis until we reach level 21, since we can unlock the next Hangman persona in Orpheus at this point. Orpheus is the first persona to get access to a tier 2 elemental spell in Agilao, and Double Fangs is a nice physical attack which can do good damage when comboed with buffs and technical hits. Cornet Fang would be useful if we could use it during regular combat, but Double Fangs should work for now. With Orpheus absorbing fire, it is also a great use for the upcoming boss fight, since this might give us a little more leeway when it comes to healing in case the boss uses fire attacks. I am not quite sure if level 21 is enough to get through Shadow Madarame, but I figured it would be worth a try, so we leave the palace and prepare for the next boss fight. We wash our new armor at the laundromat, send the calling card, and then return into the palace for big boss fight number 2 against Madarame, and this is always one that I'm dreading. We equip the Warden's Baton for a nice plus 40% to our max HP, and then start going on the attack with Makua, since Blasted Curse spells have a slightly higher base damage and we can hit 3 out of 4 parts with blast attacks. Unfortunately, we seem to be a little low on magic, so it looks like this may be a 4-shot, and considering that we always get painted after 3 turns, we aren't tanky enough, even with the extra HP, to withstand the incoming damage and get wiped here. And this is a problem, since it does not look like we have any chance to get the single parts down faster. We can hope for the right eye to cast Flame Dance to get healed, but this is only a 1 in 3 chance of happening, and Silent Snowscape hits Orthor's weakness, so if that happens, it's basically game over. Taking weakness hits from all elements after getting painted certainly doesn't help either, and even though we can heal up to full with beads, this means that we can't attack the boss, and by the time we get our next turn, we have to heal again. I tried this strategy for a couple of attempts, but it was obvious that we're not going to make any progress here, so we need to switch things up. At first I switched armors to the Zen outfit, thinking that the extra +3 agility might make Choka dodge attacks more often. Unfortunately, I couldn't really see a noticeable difference, and considering that we now also take more physical damage compared to before, I don't think this is the strategy to go for either. I'm pretty sure that once we get through phase 1, the battle is won, but getting there is quite tricky. After switching back to our previous armor, I also equipped the Ring of Lust, thinking that the extra Tarokasha with the heal might come in handy to get through the portrait parts faster. Unfortunately, this was also not a thing, since the boss on average did much more damage than what we were able to heal back. We also tried out the arms PC accessory for the +3 to all stats, hoping that maybe we can 3-shot the portrait parts with the extra magic boost, but it looks like we are depending on damage ranges here, since it usually wipes one portrait part, while barely not getting the other ones down, so I don't think this is the strategy either. We also give the Gauntless a shot, since I figured that the Angelic Grace passive evasion might help to dodge more attacks and make it a little more consistent, but as you might already expect, this was not the solution to our problem either. After failing a few more times, I was ready to go back and grind a couple of levels, but before that I wanted to try out one last thing. We itemized the Treasure Demon from earlier in order to get a regen accessory. This one not only gives +3 to strength, but also gives you the Auto Tarokasha passive, meaning that we start off the battle with an active attack buff. With the accessory equipped, we deal enough damage to get the majority of parts down in 3 turns, if we can survive for that long, which would make the rest of the battle much more easier. And because we get a lucky Flame Dance on turn 2, we got more than enough HP remaining, and just like expected, the last buffed Makua is enough to get everything but the nose down. With the nose now mostly spamming either Restore or Artist's Grace, we can easily heal up, take the restored eye part down again, and then focus on the nose with physical attacks until it's down as well, and we transition into phase 2. And this one in theory should be much easier. We start off by throwing out a double Maruki to not only damage Madarame, but also hit 2 of the 4 fakes, including the ice one, which we want to get rid of quickly since it can hit our weakness. With Orpheus absorbing fire, we don't have to worry about the repel, and with the fire fake not taking any damage from our attacks, we can make sure to always have an enemy up who partially heals Joker. Once the ice fake is down, we focus on the boss itself, and then continue using Maruki when a new one gets summoned. Once all ice fakes are gone, we also have 2 active fire ones, so we should be more than good considering that those heal Joker for more HP than the rest of them can damage him. With that, we now start focusing on Madarame with double things, and yeah, there isn't really much more to say about this. When we get painted, we just guard through the turn to prevent the weakness hits, and then continue on until Shadow Madarame is down, and Palace number 2 is completed. Now, admittedly, this was a pretty tricky battle at first, but the regen strategy worked out perfectly, and it's definitely something to keep in mind for future solo Joker Arcana runs. That being said, we have some more downtime now until the story continues. During the day, we either hang out with Maruki if is available, or go to the diner for more points into knowledge and guts, while during nighttime we start doing the Big Bang challenge for even more guts, or continue working out with the occasional infiltration tool crafting for some more proficiency. We need Guts at rank 4 to start off Iwai's confidant, and I think we're not that far off at this point, so might as well push towards getting it before we head into the next palace. And just like expected, we hit the needed rank 4 just a couple of days later, so we head to the airsoft shop to start off the confidant with Iwai. To the surprise of nobody, all of his confidant perks are gun based, with them either unlocking new customization parts or decreasing the cost of customization. And while that in itself is not that special, the feature itself is really nice, though I'm not too sure how useful some of them actually are, considering that we can also easily inflict ailments with items, for example. Either way, it's definitely something to keep in the back of our heads, so going forward we will hang out with Iwai during evening time if he is available. We still continue doing the Big Bang challenge every once in a while, since we need max guts to get Iwai past rank 7 of his confidant, but for now we can start focusing more on proficiency to get our technical rank up before the next dungeon once we unlock Kichioshi later. If Iwai is not available, we focus on working out to increase our max HP during evenings, since we want to have a good base for the next major boss coming up. With Kichioshi now unlocked, we can start raising our technical rank. I am not entirely sure if we can max it out before reaching the bank, but even a rank 2 or 3 would be a good damage increase already, so it's definitely worth starting out early. And would you look at that, we managed to get max proficiency and the last technical rank just a few days before we head into the next palace for the first time. Here we have to go through 2 sets of 2 Onis first. We try to shock the Onis in order to hit technical damage, and while we usually can't get the status on both enemies, it's still more than enough to easily make it through the 2 waves. Makoto awakens to a persona, and we battle 2 more Oni as well as his Suiki. Just like before, we try to shock the enemies, and then hit technical damage with Mafrai, which also happens to be Suiki's weakness. Isn't it nice when things fall together perfectly like that? Or maybe not so much, because the enemy's Mabufula not only hits Choka's weakness, it also freezes Makoto with the one more afterwards, wiping both her and Ryuji, so we're not off to a good start. And although we try to recover, another Mabufula is enough to wipe Choker and give us the next game over. I think this might be the very first time we got wiped on this battle. On attempt number 2, we go for the mini-boss with our ailment gun first to make sure we don't get Mabufula out immediately again, and then go for the attack on the enemy. Unfortunately, the mini-boss eventually recovers, and another Mabufula with a follow-up rampage by one of the Onis wipes us yet again. Sure, some of this can be considered bad luck, but our main persona having an ice weakness certainly does not help here at all. After getting wiped 2 more times, we finally get some decent luck when it comes to the shock procs, and with a critical double fangs, we're finally able to take out the enemy and continue on. In most other Arcana runs so far, Ippon-Datora and Madarame's palace was usually the awakening battle that gave us the most issues, but this just goes to show that a single weakness oftentimes can lead to major problems. Either way, before returning to the bank, we make a detour to Mementos again to get our last will seed accessory upgraded by Jose, as well as clearing out all open requests we got in the meantime. The main reason for this visit though are the new items that are available in Jose's shop. We stack up on large sleep vials, as we're going to need those in order to make phase 2 of the upcoming major boss battle much more manageable, but more on that when we get there. With max technical rank, the combination of shock and double fangs is usually more than enough to easily take care of most enemies, so there really isn't much worth to mention here. Once we're done with everything we can do at the moment, we return to the palace on the following day to start exploration. Going forward, we're going to allow a single party member to join us in our initial lineup, since Choka by himself cannot initiate a holdup in order to get new treasure demons. And because I only remembered that as we went into the first battle, we do this one solo Choker, and of course the treasure demon spawns pretty much immediately. This is really not a huge issue, as there is a decent chance we will encounter a few more as we progress through the palace, but I just found it funny that we literally got it on the very first encounter. In the mini boss battle against the Aura boss, I forgot to switch out Makoto, but this literally makes no difference, as they only attack with Maragi that we absorb thanks to Orpheus anyways, and a couple of attacks later, the enemies are all down. Both single encounters against Suiki and Fuki are not a big problem either, as all we need to do is shock them, and then follow up with a technical double fangs. Shortly after, we also reach level 26, so we head back into the Velvet Room to fuse the next Hangman persona, who also happens to be the strong red shadow in this palace, in Takeminakata. We get both tier 2 electricity spells here, as well as electricity boost, which is already big. To follow it up, we also gain Swift Strike at level 31, which can be huge if comboed with technical damage, especially if it hits 4 times. The shock boost is a nice bonus to make sure we can apply the status more consistently, which leads to safer fights overall as well. With Takeminakata now in possession, we head into the next mini-boss battle against the Key Trio. We start the battle off by using Masio to hit Fuki's weakness and also get a lucky shock proc on Kinki. This means that the follow-up Mafrai not only hits Suiki's weakness, but also hits technical damage on Kinki as well. Another turn of technicals and weakness hits are already enough, and we are done again. This could not have gone any better. Technicals are still way too overpowered in most situations, especially in dungeons where the game doesn't necessarily intend you to have it already. Either way, we continue on with the next mini-boss as we battle Campanda. We shock the enemy with our stun gun, and then just follow it up with big technical damage from Double Fangs again. 2 attacks later, the enemy is down, and we head towards the last bigger battle of this palace segment as we battle the Will Seed Gatekeeper Cerberus. Just like in the previous battle, we just stun the enemy, hit it with big double fangs, and then finish it off with a Mabufu. The Will Seed accessory from this palace is not really useful in a solo setup as it provides a party-wide defense buff, but as a completionist, I really hate leaving stuff behind, so we usually still get it. With that, we're basically done with the palace, though we're still only level 28, so after unlocking the fusion alarm and getting ourselves a Maragion skill card, we head back into the palace to grind on some more Takeminakatas with our own Takeminakata for some extra levels until we reach level 30 with Joker. Back in the real world, we prepare as always by washing our new armor before sending the calling card and getting ready for the next big boss fight. We equip the Warden's Baton again for a nice plus 40% HP boost, and then get going. For turn 1, we switch into Orthrus since the enemy will always open up with Missile Party, which is a fire attack that gets absorbed, followed by Ocular Vulcan. From this point on forward, the entire gimmick of this battle is that Piggy Bank starts rolling out, while you're supposed to stop it by throwing items at it. In a solo setup, this is not going to be possible though, which is why we equip the Warden's Baton to have enough HP to easily tank the incoming damage after guarding with Joker. The high max HP also has the bonus that Life Stones are healing far more HP overall, since their heal is percentage based and we can conserve our beats that way. In between the healings, we usually attack with Sionga, which deals about 100 damage per attack. While Double Fangs would be slightly stronger, it also takes 64 HP for every use, and with us already taking a ton of damage from the enemy that we need to heal up anyways, I figured that going with magic at first is probably the better idea. Since we want to save some SP for phase 2 as well though, we start switching over to Double Fangs once we have a nice amount of SP left. Piggy Bank at this point does not have a lot of health left, so this should not be a problem, and although phase 1 takes what feels like forever, we get Piggy Bank down eventually, after almost healing up to full, and then transition to phase 2 where Kaneshiro will summon his 2 bodyguards. Before we can start attacking the boss, we need to incapacitate the guards first, which is the point where the large sleep vials we bought in Mementos earlier come into play. Those have a pretty high chance to sleep both guards, and since the sleep can last for 2 turns if you're lucky, we can get a lot of damage onto the boss that way. As for damage, Kaneshiro can be inflicted with ailments as well, so we throw a Molotov cocktail to burn him, and then follow up with Mafrai to hit technical damage. Do the entire thing one more time, and Kaneshiro will already start to use Make It Rain, so once the guards have run away, we only need one more hit to end the battle, and complete Palace number 3. Kaneshiro is usually one of the easier bosses since our strategy in a solo setting works with pretty much every Arcana, but looking ahead towards the next palace, I'm already dreading what's going to wait for us there. Before we get there though, we have some more downtime first. Since we have gotten most of the social stats we need at this point, we start going to the temple during daytime to increase our max SP. During evening time, we either hang out with Iwai, raise our guts at Big Bang Burger to max it out, or just work out in our room to further increase Joker's max health. We ace the exams in order to get the Dandy Mirror accessory from Sojiro, which comes with the passive spell Counter-Strike, and if you watched previous episodes of the series, you already know why we're going to need that very soon, and with that we're basically ready to head into the next palace as we enter Futaba's pyramids. The first mini-boss here is a Garuda who is quickly taken care of with a nice shock, followed by a double fangs. Up next is the first of two mod fights, and those are always a lot tricky, especially in a case like here where mod goes first and immediately turns Joker into a mouse. During this state, we can't act and also take a ton more damage, and while we actually pull through and get rid of the ad while also freezing the boss, as soon as it gets another turn, it goes for another mouse cast, and that's all she wrote. On attempt 2, we luckily go first, so we immediately throw a freeze spray to prevent the mini-boss from getting an attack in, and then go for double thanks for nice technical damage again. While mod did mouse us yet again, we also managed to pull through, but with barely any HP left on the mouse status, and 2 ads on the enemy's side, there is no chance for survival. On our third attempt, we switch over to shock for the double technical damage hits, and because this time around we get lucky and the boss summons first instead of casting Trapped Red again, said summon actually screws the boss over since it fears Joker, which means we can't be inflicted with any other ailments while it's still on. This was pretty lucky, but just what we needed to get through the fight, so we continue on, but not for too long because the second mod fight is not far off. This one starts with 2 ads from the get-go, and since we cannot cover all weaknesses, I figured the easiest way to get through the battle is trying to shock as many enemies as possible. Unfortunately, this didn't quite work out like I hoped for on the first couple of attempts, but eventually we managed to shock mods and then start hitting out our strong technical damage. After another summon cast, we managed to get another shock on the mini-boss, and that's all we need to take it down for good. With that, the only mandatory fight left in the palace is against the Woolseed Gatekeeper Alilat. Alilat is not only weak to fire, but can also be burned, so after casting Achala with Orpheus, we switch persona and then throw a Molotov cocktail to apply the ailment. We could have also done this with Orpheus, but with the enemy using Bufodine and Orpheus being weak to fire, that is probably not the best idea. Either way, with the enemy burned, it not only takes burn damage after each turn, but we can also hit it with technical damage with Mafrai. After barely surviving a triple down, we heal up, apply burn again, and then finish the battle off with some more nuke damage. And that is basically everything for this dungeon. We are on level 35 at the moment, and with the next Hanged Man persona not unlocking until level 42, there is little reason to keep on grinding here, considering that the upcoming boss fight is 90% luck based anyways. What is useful though is that we now unlock the Gallows feature in the Velvet Room, which we will use the hell out of to buff our personas in both levels and stats. Once we're done, we leave the palace and head over to the Airsoft shop. Here we not only sell our dungeon loot, but we buy the strongest gun available and customize it for even more firepower. Shadow Wakaba takes 4 times damage from physical and gun attacks, so we want to use this to our advantage and get as much damage out of our gun as possible. Afterwards, we wash our armor at Laundromat again, hang out with Iwai to unlock his momentous request, and then hand over the calling card to Futaba before returning back into the palace. We equip the Dandy Mirror for Counter-Strike, which is basically the only reason this challenge is even possible, and then head into the boss fight against Shadow Wakaba. And I feel like we haven't talked about her in a while, so everybody who has watched previous Arcana challenges probably already knows this, but a reminder every once in a while certainly isn't bad. Shadow Wakaba is by far the easiest boss in pretty much every regular playthrough, or even most challenge runs, but in every solo setup, she is an absolute nightmare. Normally, you're supposed to shoot her down with the ballista, and then take her out with physical attacks due to her taking 4 times damage from those. This is obviously not a thing in a solo setup, so this is already not an option. But what are our options? Well, we're going to equip the Dandy Mirror, which has Counter-Strike on it, a passive ability that reflects back physical damage with a 15% chance. And while this does not sound like a lot, and trust me, it is not, it is still the most consistent way to deal damage to the boss. We can't use any physical attacks here due to the range, and magic attacks only deal around 150 damage, while a counter strike does about 750. To add to this, Wakaba attacks twice each turn and loves to spam Wing Blast on her second action, which has a chance to dizzy the target, making us take technical damage with the follow-up physical attack on the next turn. This means we regularly need to throw life stones or beads to even be able to stay alive in this fight. Luckily in this Arcana setup, we have access to Dream Needles, so we have an actual damaging move this time around, but even that one only does around 250 damage, so this is not a big game changer either. Basically, it always comes down to luck in this fight, and because this wouldn't be bad enough already, there is also the issue of time that comes into play. If you don't manage to beat Wakaba in roughly 50 turns, she will start to use the, what I like to call, Mercy Kill Megidolaon. This is a feature that several bosses in Royal have, where they just start spamming an incredibly strong version of Megidolaon if you don't manage to beat them within a specific amount of turns. Since we always open up the battle by reflecting an attack thanks to Futaba, we can immediately empty the upgraded gun, which does over 1000 damage in total. With the boss having a total of 18,000 HP though, this is only a sliver of damage that we actually need to do. The occasional chip in from Dream Needle helps, but we're still mostly relying on getting good luck when it comes to countering her physical attacks with Counter-Strike. Usually, we always get Wakaba down to roughly 10 to 50% of her HP, depending on how good our luck is, but this time around, it was completely different. And unfortunately, I don't mean that from a good end, because the luck we got was atrocious. On the first two attempts, Wakaba started spamming Megidolaon before we even got into her last phase, which usually starts off when she drops below roughly 20% of her health. I'm not going through every attempt because quite frankly they are pretty boring, so we just talk about the most important points. Obviously, we want to counter as many slams as possible, but the even bigger issue oftentimes is the Wing Blast. Not only because it cannot be countered considered it's a wind attack, but even more so because of the dizzy status procs pretty regularly happening, making it really hard to properly recover or get any kind of offense on our end in. With this being the first solo Arcana run with access to gun attacks, I figured that we would have an easier time compared to some of the others, but the first couple of attempts actually felt like it was even worse than it usually is. It also doesn't help that each of those attempts usually last for about 20 minutes, and there is basically nothing that we can do other than hoping for some good Counter-Strike luck. It only took 6 attempts, but due to the length of those, it felt like forever until we finally got some decent Counter-Strike luck. Once we get into the last phase, we can at least relax a little on the healing side, since Wakaba will also start using Sphinx Swipe, which does quite a bit less damage compared to Slam, but this also means that the potential Counter-Strike does less damage to the boss as well, so I'm actually not even sure which method I prefer here. Either way, we finally get the luck needed, and with a lot of Dream Needle support from Takumi Nakata as well, we're able to take Wakaba down and complete the next palace. And while we have quite some downtime now, we pretty much immediately head back into the mementos on the following day to clear Iwai's request by battling Shadow Tsuda, aka Belphegor. We tried both burning and shocking the enemy, but nothing would work, though luckily the boss doesn't seem to have a lot of health either. We get feared and ghastly welled, but luckily we have a couple of homunculus available which keep us alive, and a few attacks later, the boss is already down again. As a reward, we get the weird wrap armor with null fear on it, which might not come in handy immediately, but could become pretty useful down the road considering fear is oftentimes an issue in the final boss battle later on. Other than that, there is nothing worth mentioning for the most part, so once we cleared everything out, we return to the real world where we still have tons of free time before the story continues. We spent the majority of our free time praying at the temple during the day to further increase Choka's max SP, and during evenings we continue hanging out with Iwai if he is available, or continue training in Choka's room to get his max HP up even more. We max Iwai's confidant shortly afterwards, and this is basically all that we can do, so we skip forward to the point where Futaba recovers and we unlock Akihabara. Here we can buy the PC tools to repair the broken laptop, as well as buy all the remaining video games. For the completion of the video games, you get various successful accessories with elemental and passives, and the laptop is needed since we want to buy the Salvation Crown from Tanaka's black market shop down the line once we got the money needed. We also unlock Shimbocho, where we can buy all kind of books that we need in order to get the Knowing Your Heart book eventually, which expands our options for technical hits, which is always very much appreciated. The party goes to Hawaii, we hang out with the boys because once again we lack a waifu in this challenge, and shortly afterwards, we head into the next palace already. Here we start off the dungeon by battling Haru's fiancé and a couple of robots first. The robots are weak to both fire and wind, while the fiancé is weak to psi attacks. And while we can easily deal with the robots with Orthrus Maragion, we have rather big issues dealing damage to the mini-boss since we can't really properly hit its weakness. To add to this, if we don't get rid of the robots quickly enough, they will use Recarmdra to fully heal all other targets. Once the ads are down though, the battle is manageable for the most part, even though it takes a while to take the actual boss down. Coming up next are the robot chiefs, and those are another problem. The first one can still be quickly taken down since it is weak to electricity, and we do more than enough damage thanks to Takemi Nakata's electricity boost, but we are struggling hard with the other two. The second chief is weak to both wind and bless, both elements that we cannot properly cover at the moment. We only have access to Makua that we got all the way back in Madarame's palace, and as you can see, the damage we do with that one is not really the highest. We also again have the problem of not being able to properly wipe the ads either, so we need to watch out for more Recarmdras that are coming up. With an extra Tarokasha to buff our attack though, the robots luckily go down without bigger problems, and with that we can start focusing on the boss until it eventually goes down as well. The last chief robot is similar to that though. This time around we make sure to not leave any of the ads alive to prevent the Recarmdra from happening. Just like before, we buff our attack so we can make sure to take them out in 2 hits, and then switch back to Orthrus to keep the ads down. And while it may not look like it on first glance, this is the most we have struggled with those chief fights in a while. The Hanged Man itself is pretty decent in general when it comes to elemental coverage, but we are lacking pretty much all elements needed for those kind of fights. The robots love to spam Recarmdra, and if they don't, their triple downs and assault dives do quite a bit of damage, which causes us to game over in this battle several times. It also doesn't help that our main persona for this fight in Orthrus is also quite underleveled at this point as well. Because of this, I decided to backtrack and make a quick detour to the Velvet Room. During Fusion Alarm, we can itemize our Orthrus into a Maragion card, so I figured it would be much easier to just slap that onto Takemi Nakata due to its higher magic stats. And while we are already here, we also inherit Aiga from a treasure demon to properly hit the chief's weakness. With those changes in place, we return into battle, and I think it's pretty easy to see what kind of difference that makes. We now not only have a much easier time against the ads, but also deal way more damage to the mini-boss itself. It's literally only 2 turns now until the enemies are down, and we can continue on. During dungeon progression, we also reach level 42 in Joker, which means it is now time to fuse the next persona of the Hanged Man with Hackathon Kairos, so let's take a quick look at it again. As it's relatively easy to see, we get the first proper physical based persona of this challenge here. But that's not all. Hackathon Kairos is the first regular persona in the game to get access to Endure as a safety anchor, so we won't immediately go down in case we get super unlucky. To top it off, we also get access to Gatling Blows on level 49, which is a single target 3 to 4 hit attack, and while the power might look a little low at first, this is actually great. Multi-hit attacks usually outweigh single hit attacks by quite a bit, since the base damage is calculated from a square root, so multi-hit attacks scale much better when you take the amount of possible hits into consideration. But we are not quite finished here yet. During Fusion, we also want to prepare for the major boss of this dungeon later on. As you might know, the robot chiefs all have certain weaknesses, and if we can't hit those properly, we basically stand no chance in a solo challenge. For that reason, we carry over a couple of single target spells during Fusion, and try to mutate them into the AoE version. In this case, it's mostly either Garula or Kuga for wave 4, and Aiga for wave 5 of the robots. For the other waves, we should be good, but especially for the later ones, we need good base damage to go with everything, since we have no chance to get through them otherwise, but we will go more into detail on that when we get there. We continue on in the dungeon until we run into the next mini-boss, which is a wave of more small robots. And while this is usually not a big deal in general, we run into a similar problem like earlier, as we don't have the necessary elements needed to properly deal damage, in this case either ice or psi. Not wiping the robots in a single turn usually leads to them casting Mataronda and Masukonda to decrease our attack and evasion, so this makes things even more complicated. Luckily the incoming damage is not that bad if you manage to wipe a couple of them at least, but during later waves this can add up quickly and actually causes us to almost get wiped here. And while we successfully beat them on the first try, it still gave us more issue than I was expecting. Progression in this dungeon in general has not been very smooth for the most part, but hopefully this is going to change somewhat soonish. Either way, we still have the Woolseed Gatekeeper in front of us in Melchizedek. The initial strategy here is to shock the enemy and then attack with physical technical damage. And while this generally works well, we can get unlucky occasionally since the enemy has high counter. Technically this is only a 20% chance of happening, but it does feel like it happens a lot more regularly when the enemy has it compared to us. And because we're not unlucky enough yet, the enemy crits on a God's hand soon after and wipes us. On attempt number 2, we manage to shock ourselves after Joker's gun gets reflected, and needless to say, we didn't hold on for very long after that either. Eventually, I decided that it's probably easier to burn the enemy and go for technical nuke damage, even though it does less damage than the physical hits. The passive burn damage adds up over time, so it's probably not even that big of a difference to the shock strategies anyways. This works well, and we're able to take the enemy down a couple of turns later and retrieve the last will seed, and this is actually a rather nice one since it lets you start the battle with concentrate once you bring it to Josei, which is going to make dungeon progression quite a bit easier going forward. Either way, we're done with the dungeon now, so we only need to inherit Maiga and Magarula on Takeminikata, and then we should be good for the boss fight. And while we got Maiga on the very first attempt, we didn't really get lucky with Magarula unfortunately. I attempted to inherit Magarula on Takeminikata for like 30 minutes, until I took another look into the fusion calculator, only to find out that Takeminikata can literally inherit everything but wind attacks. So much for that. Because of this, we needed to do the entire fusion thing from early again to get Makuga to Hekaton Kairos, and then transfer that one over to Takeminikata. Man, this is getting complicated, but luckily this is usually the only boss in the challenge that requires that amount of preparation. But even with the inherited skills, we're not fully done yet. Back in the real world, we had to Kichiyuji to trade the Thief Mask for Magica Bufudas. Those apply the Concentrate spell when used, and luckily we get 2 of those, which is exactly the amount we need for later. We also head to the Stone-On shop to buy the Night Necklace, which comes with the Cursed Amp passive to make sure we got enough damage in against the big boy robot face. We wash our clothes again, and with everything else set now, we can send the calling card and then head back into the dungeon for one of the scariest bosses in the challenge, Okumura and the robot waves. The first 3 waves are not a big issue yet. Wave 1 is quickly taken care of with a double Maragion, and while we need 2 turns for wave 2 since we only have access to Mabufu, those are not a problem either yet. Wave 3 is easy thanks to Mazionga and the electricity boost, but once wave 4 spawns, the real battle begins. The plan here is to throw one of the Magica Bufudas for concentrate, buff Choker's attack, and then throw out a big Makuga to damage all the enemies. Unfortunately, this is not so easy because Okumura likes to troll immensely in this battle. Either the enemies crit us and we need to heal up again, or Okumura screws us over by either casting the Kasha to negate our attack buff, or use Feminine Scream to potentially inflict Joker with hunger. On the first attempt, we get wiped because I was playing it a little too risky, thinking that we could tank through the attacks when it was barely not enough. On attempt number 2, we make it right back to wave 4, but we run into a similar problem like earlier. Either Okumura trolls us, or we get stalled for long enough that our attack buff runs out and we need to reapply it again, or we have so much incoming damage that we need to heal and can't properly attack. With all those things in mind, it's really hard to get a good enough pattern going to actually go for the attack. We only got 2 magic up of Futas, and we need the second one for the next wave, so once we commit to the attack, we only have 1 shot to get through the wave, or otherwise it's a reset. So yeah, as you can see, this is not that easy. Either we get wiped again because we're playing it too risky, or we lack the necessary damage to advance the next wave. Another thing to keep in mind here is that Okumura will always use Rakukash on a single robot after the first turn, meaning that doing a little more than half damage per turn is usually not enough since the defense buff will keep one robot alive, which will cause the boss to respawn the entire wave again. It took a couple of attempts, but eventually things finally went the way like I wanted, and we can make it through wave 4 and into wave 5, which should hopefully become a little easier now that we can also make use of the cursed amp accessory we bought earlier. Just like before, we use our second magic up of Futa and try to get everything set up, but of course the very first robot crit choker and the one more and the guaranteed hits after are enough to wipe us, so we have to start all over again. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Luckily we make it back to wave 5 again on the very next attempt, and this time around, Lady Luck is on our side as we don't get critted again, so once we finish setting up, we throw out the big Maiga and can easily wipe all of the enemies before they get to run away. Against Biggest Boy, we can work with status elements like Shock or Freeze, so this should by default be much easier than the previous waves, especially considering that he won't run away after 2 turns. The enemy does decent damage, but overall it's not that big of a problem. As long as we make sure to guard after Big Bang Order to reduce the damage of Big Bang Challenge, there isn't a lot that can happen to us any longer, and although it takes a while, the enemy eventually goes down, and with that the battle is basically won. We guard Robot Haru's explosion, and a single hit to Okumura is enough to take him out and complete the next palace successfully. Okumura is always a major roadblock, especially with the solo Arcana, so I'm pretty glad we got through it, albeit being that we had quite a few problems during the battle. Either way, we got some more downtime now before we can continue on with the game. With Haru now unlocked, we can continue Maruki's Confidant and also make sure to read the books from Chibocha during evening times, considering that we're close to maxing out our HP anyways. We expand our technical conditions, get Maruki to rank 9, and then get back to the usual activities like praying at the temple or working out or playing video games during evenings. We also stumble into the final palace accidentally, where Kasumi awakens to her persona and we have to fight a Byakuya. With Makuga, this is not a real problem though, and we can easily take it out within a few turns. The party goes to this Destiny Land. Haru's dad steps on a Lego, and then Akechi blackmails the party into joining him, so we're off into the next palace soon after. The Omni Resist also is annoying because we don't have any access to almighty magic, but is still luckily not a big issue, even with reduced damage. With Choka reaching level 51 during dungeon progression, it is also time for us to take a look into the next persona of the Hanged Man, as we can now fuse a Yadayu. And this is what I have been waiting for. Not only do we get access to tier 3 wind magic, which combos exceptionally well with the burn status, but we also get a wind amp to go with it. With burn and wind, as well as shock and physical attacks, we should be able to breeze through the majority of regular enemies at least. To top it off, it is also the only persona of the Hanged Man to resist blast attacks, so it will also be very useful against the final boss later on. Overall, just a great upgrade to our team. The first real mini-boss battle is against Neburos, who is weak to both Bless and Wind spells, so there is no better way to test out the power of our new persona. And as you can see, the combination of a tier 3 spell and an elemental amp is huge, as we are almost able to take out the enemy on the very first turn, so this one is finished soon after. The next battle is against a Yadayu, this time on the enemy's side, though I do feel like we got the better chances here. We shock the enemy using our stun gun, and then just switch over into Hackathon Kairos to finish it off with some nice Gatling blows. The final mini-boss battle for part 1 of the palace is against Norn. While we can burn it with a Molotov cocktail, we unfortunately can't combo it with Magarodine as it absorbs wind, so we need to switch over to nuke damage for technical hits. While this deals way less damage compared to our usual strategy, it is still more than enough, and we can easily wipe the enemy and complete part 1 of the palace without further issues. After paying Sai a visit in the courtroom on the following day, we return to the palace where we first go up against the Willseed gatekeeper Baal. Similar to Norn, we can burn it, but with this being another enemy that can't be damaged with wind damage, we need to switch up strategies again. Because of this, we go for Shock and then switch into Hackathon Kairos and Gatling Blows for technical damage to get the mini-boss down without problems. At the end of the Dark Maze, we get greeted by Raja Naga, but unfortunately for it can be burned and is also not immune to wind damage, so you know what that means. Molotov Cocktail, Magarodine, and we're already done here. The last set of battles is the Solo Joker Gauntlet, which as usual is free. The 2 Ganesha are quickly taken care of with Mapsio, the Rangda literally one-shot with Mazionga, and Thor gets burned and then obliterated with Magarodine. And with that, we are already done with the palace. We still have some downtime before we head into the next boss battle, so we use those days by going to the temple some more during day. During evenings, there is nothing we can do anymore since we maxed our HP, so we mostly just go to sleep early to pass time faster. Once the Day of Reckoning is upon us, we return back into the palace to battle Shadow Sai, and this one is always quite annoying in a solo setting, at least phase 1. Since we can't catch her cheating with just Joker, we have to lose the roulette a total of 10 times before she automatically transitions into phase 2. This takes forever, so we really want to get through this boss fight on the first attempt to make sure we don't have to do the entire thing all over again. Once she transitions, the actual battle begins. Sai will now spin the roulette to land on a specific element, and we can actually influence that. By selecting Hackathon Kairos, she's guaranteed to roll Bless on the first roulette, which means she will attack with Bless attacks while taking neutral damage from Curse. Ideally, we would have wanted to roll Electricity here for neutral damage on Wind, but since we got no persona with an Electricity weakness, this is unfortunately not going to be a thing. Either way, Maiga does decent damage as well, and we make good progression in the battle. If we get low on HP, we can heal with our new Salvation Crown accessory, and then continue on until Sai rolls the roulette again. Since we have chosen Hackathon Kairos again, the next roll is somewhat random since she will never roll the same element twice in a row, and we land on Sai, which is bad because we still don't have any persona with proper nuke spells. Because of this, we just go for Magarodines until Sai rolls again, this time hitting Nuke, and while we can cover Psy damage with Yadayu, Nuke is also its only weakness, so this is probably not the best way to go at it. Hackathon Kairos has Mapsio as well, but obviously much lower magic, so the overall damage is not too high. On the third roll she goes for Bless again, so we switch into Takemi Nakata and go for more Maiga casts, until the next roll eventually lands on Almighty. Shadow Sai is now neutral to all elements and will cycle through several physical attacks before going for Berserker Dance, which is an incredibly strong Almighty attack that we definitely need to guard if we want to survive. Unfortunately, I screwed up the timing on the first one, but thanks to all of our main personas having endured at this point, we can still stay in battle and heal up again. We guard the second Berserker Dance on time, heal up again, but after using it twice, Sai seemingly uses Berserker Dance on every other turn, which is something that I was not aware of, so we get wiped here. And of course this means that we also have to go through the roulette phase one more time. Either way, once we get back into the actual fight, it is pretty much a copy of attempt number 1. Once she rolls Almighty again, we're changing up our strategy though. Since Sai will exclusively attack with physical attacks with the exception of Berserker Dance, we can use that to throw a couple of physical ointments that we saved up to reflect the majority of damage back at her. This way, we can make sure that we can reflect enough damage to not stay in the last phase for all too long, and just a few repels later, Shadow Sai wipes herself, and we complete the next major dungeon of the game. Joker gets caught, we go back to the very beginning of the game, and once we have gone through the 342 cutscenes that are happening here, we're basically ready to head into the next palace pretty much immediately. As always, we got the 5 letters of recommendation we need to grab in here, with a nice little brutal battle against Akechi to finish things off, so I would say we get started right away. The first battle is against Yamato no Orochi. At first the burn didn't stick, so I wasn't sure anymore if the enemy might actually be immune to burn. I know that we can shock it, so we throw a stun gun instead, and then deal technical damage to the enemy using Gatling blows. After the ailment wore off, I threw another Molotov cocktail because I was pretty sure that the enemy should be able to be burned, and yeah, there you go, this is what we're looking for. Now all we need to do is switch into Yadayu and get the enemy down with Magarodine before it even gets a single attack off. On the way to mini boss number 2, Joker reaches level 60, which means we will make a detour to the Velvet Room to fuse the next Hangman persona in Moloch, and this one might blow everything out of the way for now. Just look at those elemental affinities. We have 2 absorbs, a null, and 2 resists with only a single weakness. On the offensive side, we get access to both tier 3 fire spells as well as fire amp, so we already got 2 elements that we can deal big damage with. Drain Fire is a nice passive, but is probably not going to be used a lot since its main purpose is to carry it over to other demons. With that out of the way, we head into mini boss battle number 2 against Farneas. Just like Yamato no Orochi before, Farneas can be burned, though with insta heal it has a chance to shake it off before we get our next attack in. All of this doesn't even matter though, as the mini boss will exclusively attack with Psy damage, which is something that Moloch drains, so there is literally no way the enemy can damage us. Once the burn sticks, we switch into Yadayu for the technical damage of Magarodine, and just a bit later, mini boss number 2 is already down. We continue on with Hanuman, who is accompanied by 2 Garudas next. We open up with a double Mazionga to try and shock the ads, and while we got shock to stick on one Garuda, Hanuman rages the other one, so we need to watch out for incoming damage now. Luckily though, this means that we can also hit technical damage with fire attacks, so after knocking them down with another Mazionga, a Marachidine is enough to take both ads out. While this version of Hanuman absorbs fire, there isn't much he can do without his allies on the field, so we slowly take him down. Hanuman is weak to ice, though with the evade ice passive, it's hard to hit the enemy, so eventually we just switch over into Magarodine and continue wailing on the mini boss until it's down. Up next is the Willseed Gatekeeper of the Palace, which is a Kali and 2 Dakini, and good grief is this battle annoying. All enemies exclusively attack with physical hits, but they hit real hard, and with sword stance having a pretty high crit chance, the battle is usually over before all too long. And if this wasn't bad enough already, the enemies also love to rage Joker, and if that happens, it's also game over. We have to hope that we can stun multiple enemies with Mazionga to reduce the incoming damage, and then try to wipe the ads with technical hits. Unfortunately, this sounds easier than it actually is, so we get wiped here over and over and over again. It took like 6 or 7 tries until we finally got the luck needed and get to wipe both Dakini, so from this point on, it should be an easy battle, right? Wrong! Because while Kali is by itself now, a crit Brave Blade with another follow-up attack can still easily wipe Joker. After a few more failed attempts, I also tried switching over to the large sleeping vial I still had in my inventory from the Kaneshiro battle earlier, since sleep will trigger technical hits from all kinds of damage, and while that was an improvement, it's still very luck dependent on whether we can make it or not. After getting wiped roughly 20 times in total, we get an attempt where we're able to take both Dakini down, and Kali doesn't troll us too hard, so we're finally able to beat all of them and retrieve the last Willseed. I don't even know why I'm going for them since most of them aren't really used anyways. Either way, we're back to regular story progression now as we try to get the 4th letter by battling Oberon, who is accompanied by 2 Titanias. Theoretically, you can burn all enemies in this, so we start off the battle by using Frydine and then follow up with Marachidine to hopefully get the status on. Oberon will use Hamon occasionally, but even if it hits, it shouldn't matter too much since we have quite a few homunculus in our inventory anyways. After not getting the burn proc within a few turns, I switched over to our good old stun gun and then follow up with some technical damage from Gatling blows. With that, we make quick work of the mini-boss and only clean up whatever is left of the Titanias afterwards. The last letter of recommendation is gained from Ongyoki. The mini-boss has a fixed pattern where he will always start off with Maiga, then Myriad Slashes, and then Mudon. With Moloch Null Curse, the physical attack is the only thing we need to worry about here, so this battle is somewhat free if we guard the physical turns. Just heal up the damage from Myriad Slashes whenever necessary, and continue to do damage with Marachidine. The battle takes a while due to the enemy's bulk and its buffs, but generally there isn't much that can happen here, and after a while the final mini-boss goes down. The only thing left to do now is go through Akechi, so let's get started right away. Phase 1 is against his two minions who do huge damage due to their desperation buff. Thanks to Endure, we can take the first round, and after healing up, we manage to barely survive the following turn with 3 HP left. Luckily we wipe Cerberus before their next attack, and once only one enemy is left standing, the phase is not an issue any longer. We continue on with regular Akechi, who has a very fixed pattern as well, always cycling through Kuga on, Aiga on, and Megaton Raid before starting all over again. The incoming damage is not really an issue and can easily be out-healed. Even the Megadollon he gets access to once his HP drop below a certain level is not really a problem, and we continue on until he transforms into Loki Akechi, which is where the real boss fight starts. During the first phase, Akechi will only use physical attacks and put up a Tetrakarn, which is not an issue since we mostly attack with magic anyways. What is a problem though is that negative pile can inflict despair on a character, and if that sticks on Joker, it is game over since we have no way to heal that. That's not the only thing we need to watch out for, as he can also crit during this phase, which he will follow up by using Desperation on the one more to further buff his attack. The fact that he attacks twice each turn certainly doesn't make things any easier either. Brave Blade hits for more than half of our max HP, so we're struggling big time to get damage in, and can usually only attack properly if Joker manages to dodge attacks. Eventually, we push the mini-boss towards half HP, at which point he will switch into his magical phase, and now we can start to relax for a little while at least. Akechi will now either attack with curse attacks that we null, or fire attacks that we absorb. While he mixes in a Megadollon every once in a while, this is not an issue as the Maragion usually heals up the majority of damage taken, so we don't need to worry here. Akechi will regularly put up Makara cards during this phase, so I just put the battle on auto to attack with physical hits in the meantime. Eventually, he will switch into his last phase where he will also start using Levantine, which is an incredibly strong attack. Luckily, Akechi will always glare at Joker before going for it, so we can easily tank it by guarding and then continue on. During this phase, Akechi will use all attacks from before, while also going for another glare every once in a while, but with Joker now dealing full damage again with Marachidine, we're good on damage at least. We still need to heal up regularly, but overall we can control the battle rather well, and after a bit, Akechi goes down for good, and we're finished with this palace for now at least. The Akechi battle gave us quite a bit of trouble in previous Arcana runs, so I'm glad that we got through this one on the first try. Before we send the calling card though, we're going to kill some time first. In the beginning of December, you can take the Twin Wardens to the mall to get a Heat Riser skill card as a reward, and this is definitely something we need for the upcoming boss fights, so we try to quickly pass the time until then. We can still go to the temple during the day to increase Joker's max SP, but other than that, there isn't really anything useful left for us to do anymore, so we just go to bed or study in LeBlanc otherwise. We don't need any knowledge any longer, but studying if LeBlanc is empty is actually a tiny bit faster than going to bed manually, so there is that. Once we obtain the skill card, we send the calling card and head back into the palace for the next big and long boss fight. Shido is split up into several boss fights. In the first one, we have to go through 3 phases, starting with the Beast. This one repels all physical damage, so magic is the way to go here, which is not an issue for us, since that's been the main way of us getting through the game anyways. The incoming damage is not that big of an issue. The only thing we need to watch out for is Shido trying to rage the party. While we do have Heat Riser at this point, it doesn't make much sense to use it during this phase, as Shido will counter it with the Kasha anyways, so we just throw out attacks until Shido transitions into the Wings form. During this phase, he will resist all magic attacks, so we switch over to Hakazon Kairos and go for the attack with Gatling Blows. In this phase, Shido will attack with tier 3 elemental magic, but just like before, the incoming damage is manageable for the most part, so it's not a big deal here either. When he drops below a third of his HP, he will transform one more time into the pyramid, where he will start using Cannon Fire twice, before charging up for a big Pyramid Blast attack. With Heat Riser up, there is a good chance we can dodge Cannon Fire, and while he charges up, we just guard to easily tank the Pyramid Blast attack. We can heal up with Salvation, and then just continue on until the pyramid is down as well, and we transition into fight 2 against Shido. He will now start buffing himself with Heat Riser occasionally, but with the baptismal waters we bought in church during Sundays, we can easily negate that. Shido will switch between Bloodbath and several elemental attacks during this phase, but as long as we got Heat Riser up, the incoming damage is manageable, so we can just attack with Marachidine while healing up whenever needed. Since this is basically all there is to this phase, we continue on until Shido transforms again into True Shido, and with that we're in the last battle of this boss fight. In the final battle, Shido will attack twice each turn again. Just like before, he opens up with Heat Riser, which we can again negate with Baptismal Waters, and then attack with Heat Wave or Bloodbath on the physical side, and tier 3 elemental attacks on the magical side. He will also start using Charge before Heat Wave after a while, but with buffs up, we can still easily tank it. There is also a chance we can repel physical damage thanks to our armor, but that is not that likely to happen, so this is more considered a bonus than an actual strategy. When Shido drops below half HP, he will start going for his 3 turn attacks, so we throw a physical ointment to reflect Tyrant's Fist. Tyrant's Purge will be negated thanks to the Homunculus, and Tyrant's Wave is the only thing we need to tank, and we even get a dodge on that one. One more Marachidine at this point is enough to push him into the last phase, where he will eject everybody out of battle, not like that would make a difference, and go into a one-on-one against Joker. Since Shido's attack in this phase are scripted, there is nothing unexpected that's happening to us at this point any longer, so we just continue buffing, healing and attacking until Shido goes down for good, and we beat the next big boss on our very first attempt. Not going to lie, this went pretty smooth. Shido is always a very intense battle, so I'm glad that we got it on the first try as well. With that, we got some more downtime, but with Joker already having maxed SP as well, there is literally nothing useful we can do any longer, so we just go to bed early until Christmas Eve, where the party decides to erase mementos for good. During this, we also reach level 73 with Joker, which means we could theoretically fuse the next persona of the Hanged Man with Macabre. Since this one is royally exclusive though, we can't get access to it until after the vanilla portion, so we have to postpone that for a while still. With Mementos not having anything else noteworthy to mention, we skip ahead to the first Grail fight and the part where Mementos merges with the real world, and we have to go through a couple of Archangels now, starting off with Uriel. Uriel will start the battle by summoning 2 angels who love to spam Recarmdra when they get low on HP. Since we don't have the firepower to consistently wipe them without triggering the Recarmdra, we leave them alone for now and focus on the boss itself. With a Heat Riser up, the incoming damage is manageable, though we still need to watch out since the enemy gets 2 actions each turn and for some reason also crits somewhat regularly. We have to juggle buffs and heals, so getting damage on the boss is not always that easy, but unless we get super bad luck, there is nothing that should be able to wipe us. The occasional counter helps in mitigating the incoming damage and gives us more chances to attack, and after what feels like quite a while, Uriel is down, so afterwards we only need to clear up whatever is left of the angels at that point. The next battle coming up is Raphael, who is purely physical focused and will only use charge before going for sword stance. Again, we put up buffs to reduce the incoming damage and hope for a lucky counter strike every once in a while. The regular sword stance is not that dangerous, even including the follow-up attack if it crits, so for the early portions of the game we should be pretty safe. Once Raphael gets into low HP animation though, he will always use Dekasha before hitting the sword stance, and this is where things get dangerous because if he gets a critical now, the one more is very likely to wipe us. We do have Endure, so if that happens once, we're still good, but if that happens twice, we're dead. Luckily we never really got into that phase though, as we reflect the sword stance and 2 more attacks are enough to get rid of the enemy. We continue on with Gabriel, who has a very fixed pattern as well, always going for a double Divine Judgment which reduces our HP by half first, and then follow it up with Maziodyne and Mabufodyne on the following turn. Divine Judgment is bad since we have no persona which nulls Bless, and with the Salvation Crown equipped, our accessory slot is blocked as well. We also can't use Moloch in this battle since it has an ice weakness, so we usually have Moloch use Heat Riser during the Divine Judgment turns, and then switch over to Yadayu for Magarudyne. Due to this, we have to heal regularly and can only attack the enemy like once every 3 turns, but at least the fight is consistent enough for us to not accidentally get wiped in case we get bad luck due to getting frozen or shocked. The fight once again takes forever like this, but there isn't really much we need to worry about and the enemy goes down eventually so we can continue on. The last of the Archangels is Michael, who is probably the most dangerous of them all. Similar to Uriel, he will summon 2 angels to start off the battle, which we will once again ignore to prevent them from accidentally casting Recharmdra to fully heal the boss. Michael has a fixed pattern as well, which we can use once again to know which attack is coming up next. The problem with this, the way this battle is set up with him constantly getting buffed and doing strong attacks, we barely have any chances to attack him. He opens up the battle by charging up and using Sword Stance, then uses Divine Judgment followed by another magical attack, then goes for Debilitate and Megalodon, and then finishes his pattern off with 2 regular attacks. I noticed that we have a couple of Ouija boards in our inventory, so we can use those to insta-wipe the angels and keep Michael from being buffed too much, though this is only partially helpful as we will run out of them way before we're able to finish this fight. Michael will resummon the angels on the turn where he usually goes for a regular attack, which is not even that good, because we hope to once again reflect some physical damage, and those turns are usually one of the safer ones. Either way, once we run out of Ouija boards, we are constantly stuck cycling between using Heat Riser and Salvation just to stay alive. We get about 1 attack in per cycle on average, which is usually when he uses his regular attacks, or when he misses a couple of attacks so we can skip a heal. And if this wasn't bad enough already, on Sword Stance turns, we need to hope to not get critted because the battle could quickly become even more dangerous otherwise. While Futaba can sometimes help when it comes to healing or reapplying buffs, this can also throw our cycles off a little, so we run into situations where our Heat Riser runs out, Michael uses Debilitate, and suddenly we're -1 on all of our stats. Luckily we still managed to recover, but with all those things going on at the same time, the battle takes forever due to the low amount of attacks we can do. After almost 25 minutes, a reflected physical attack is enough to wipe Michael, and after clearing up the angels, our path to the Holy Grail is set. Before we head there though, we make another quick detour into the Velvet Room since Choka has reached level 82 in the meantime, which means it's time to fuse the ultimate persona of the Hanged Man, Addis, and there are a few useful things here. When it comes to elemental affinities, I would say that Moloch wins here, but Addis' moveset is really nice, having access to Blazing Hell, so with the Fire Amp from Moloch we can deal big damage here. The real champs on the skill list are Enduring Soul and Salvation though. Enduring Soul gives us another layer of protection, fully healing Choka when he would get wiped, and Salvation as a full heal is incredible since it frees up our accessory slot, so we can put in something like the Ring of Greed from Okumura's palace, which gives us access to Concentrate. Overall, a great persona to have, and honestly kinda funny that we get the ultimate persona of the Arcana before getting access to the one right below it on the list. Once we carry over Fire Amp from Moloch, we're basically ready for the next big boss battle, so we head towards the Holy Grail first. This battle is like the majority of solo Arcana ones so far. We buff up a couple of times with Heat Riser to make sure it's not going to run out immediately, heal up if needed, and then use Concentrate as well as Blazing Hell to deal damage. The incoming attacks for the most part are no issue, At least nothing that we couldn't deal with, so as long as we watch our HP and buffs, we can easily get through the battle and then transition into the actual problematic boss fight against Yaldaboth. Just like before, we start the battle by throwing out a couple of heat rises for duration, then concentrate and start attacking. As long as the boss is by itself, it will only use Arrow of Light, which doesn't do much damage, but of course that's the easy part. As soon as we deplete the first 1500 HP, the first ad gets summoned, in this case the gun. Distorted Lust is annoying since it's a 50-50 chance whether we can act on the following turn or not, but overall it's not that big of an issue yet, and we can continue on until the bell gets summoned. And here is where it gets interesting for several reasons. First of all, its special attack Distorted Vanity makes Joker weak to all elements, similar to Madarame's Paint, so we definitely need to watch out for that. But that's not all. The bell also repels fire attacks, so Blazing Hell is not going to be a thing. We do have Makuga on as backup here, but without any passive boost or amps, the damage is not really that high. Still, we do enough damage to quickly get through this phase and have the sword summoned right after. And while 3 potential adds can become an issue, I would much rather have that than being weak to everything every other turn, considering the sword special attack only doubles the cost of your skills and we have more than enough SP healing items anyways. We also have the Counter-Strike armor equipped, which has quite a bit lower defense compared to our newer armor, but the 15% chance to counter physical hits is definitely worth it, I would say. One thing I haven't even talked about yet is Yaldaboth's attacking pattern. If there are no parts to be revived, the boss will usually either use Arrow of Light, which is the preferred attack, or the Kaja to negate all of our buffs. And this can be especially lethal if it happens when several adds are out, since we are having troubles putting buffs back on, considering we take a lot of damage and are usually occupied with healing when that happens. Overall, we're hanging in pretty well though, and soon after the book comes out as well. The Kaja is still by far our worst enemy though. There is nothing that sucks more than reapplying Heat Riser after your buffs ran out, only to have the boss immediately negate them, basically wasting your entire turn in the process. We got both Enduring Soul and Endure on Addis, so we do have some safety anchors, but if we get unlucky like this over and over again, even those won't save us. Distorted Avarice is another nasty attack, as it always does 50% of Joker's current HP as damage and also inflicts hunger. The status is not the problem, but with having your HP reduced by half early on in a turn, when there are 3 more potential hits coming in, probably makes this the most dangerous phase of the entire battle. And while we try to quickly get through here, we're oftentimes stuck healing while we're trying to reapply Heat Riser. And all of this doesn't even take into account that if we finally manage to get a Heat Riser off, there is a decent chance that Yaldaboth will immediately negate them with the Kaja. The sword having the chance to crit doesn't make things any easier, and we have our first and also our second safety anchor triggered soon afterwards, so next time we're done for. Overall, we're still hanging in somehow, and even make it all the way to the last ad part with the counter attack. In the end though, we get trolled really hard with Yaldaboth immediately negating our buffs right after setting them up, literally 4 times in a row, and with all parts out, we get to the point where we weren't able to tank the incoming damage any longer, so we get wiped here after 30 minutes of battling the boss. And I gotta admit, I'm a little surprised about this one. We had other Arcanas do this first try which had a worse setup going in, though if we wouldn't have gotten trolled this hard by the Kaja, we probably would have had this in the bag. Still, I decided to do a couple of changes to improve our setup. First of all, we equipped the Primate Vest to not only have some more defense, but the extra +6 agility might give us slightly higher chances to dodge the incoming attacks, which is always good. We also teach High Counter to Addis, which is a skill card we've gotten in Mementos after finishing a request. While this is only 5% more than the Counter-Strike from the previous armor, it might still make a little difference, so with those changes set, we head back into the fight. On attempt number 2, we also make a slight change to our strategy. Since the initial concentrated Blazing Hell already did good damage, we just use regular attacks on Yaldaboth to bait out the gun, so we can immediately snipe it with Blazing Hell after it spawns, though we're still slightly off on one-shotting it. I don't know if that makes any difference, but early big damage is always good since another attack is enough to wipe the parts, even if we're not concentrated. We also do the same thing for the bell with Makuga on right after. Keeping parts down is going to be crucial, and as long as we don't constantly get the Kajat again, I think this should work just fine. The high counter also helps against incoming physical attacks, and while this is not something we should rely on, it can be a good help when it triggers. It might also be a coincidence, but it certainly feels like the plus 6 agility help in dodging quite a bit more attacks compared to before as well. The distorted avarice phase is again the most dangerous one, so we try to get through that one quickly. This time we also get much luckier with Yaldaboth not constantly spamming the Kasha, so we can get through each phase much easier and eventually get to the point where the boss will revive all parts at full health to prepare for the big race of control attack, and this is exactly what we were looking for. We managed to not have any endure trigger yet, so we can concentrate and buff ourselves without trying to guard the attack, since we will get a full heal afterwards anyways, which means we can immediately fire off a big blazing hell right after. If we manage to keep the individual parts down, future rays of control will be much weaker, and this works out perfectly. With Yaldaboth preparing for rays of control every couple of turns now, the chance to get the Kajat also becomes much lower. In fact, it didn't happen a single time at this point, which makes me believe that the boss just won't use it at this stage any longer. Since we can control the battle pretty well this way, it's only a matter of time before we throw out the final blazing hell attack and are able to take Yaldaboth down, therefore successfully completing the vanilla portion of the game. All it took was just not getting atrocious luck, and after piercing a god, we spent Christmas Eve with Sojiro and Futaba because no waifu is waiting for us. The new year approaches, things get weird, and we head into the final palace, now with Akechi and Kasumi at our side where we have to battle Hastur. With Attis repelling wind attacks, we don't need to worry about Vacuum Wave, and the other attacks don't really do much damage either. Just attack with Blazing Hell until the scripted Showtime attack triggers, and we're already done again. After talking to all party members, we return to the palace where we have to go up against Sumire first. This battle is usually a joke, and it's not much different this time around. A concentrated Blazing Hell almost one-shots her, so a follow-up attack is all we need to take her down. The battle against Sanria, on the other hand, is a little trickier because once again, we don't have the proper elements to take down the Byakuya in a single turn. With them also nulling fire, we need to switch up our strategy here. Since we're not going to outdamage the drains from Sanria, the strategy is to take as many Byakuya out as possible, as they will stop spawning eventually. With Frydine and Makuga on, we have a decent strategy to take them out, though it usually takes 2 turns for us to do so. Luckily, the incoming damage for the most part is no issue at all, especially with the Byakuya regularly healing Choka thanks to Malak's Drain Fire, so we can just continue on taking them down until they stop respawning, and then focus on the main target with concentrated Blazing Hells. After some more plot, we return to the palace a couple of days later for part 1 of the palace exploration. Since we unlocked the royal content quite a bit ago now, this also means we can grab our final persona for this run in Macabre, and since it actually shows up as a regular enemy here, I figured we can grab it via negotiation instead of using it, so let's take a quick look at it. Stat-wise, it obviously is already behind quite a bit compared to Attis, but there are 2 skills here that we want to carry over onto our other personas, namely Myriad Slashes and Ollie Dance. Myriad Slashes is great for the final boss battles, since I always like to use a charged physical attack after taking down all tentacles for big damage, and Ollie Dance, well, dodging more attacks is always great. Nothing more to note here. The first mini-boss fight is against the Chimera and the Dionysus, but I won't even mention this as a single concentrated Magarodine is enough to wipe both enemies on the first turn. The final battle for this segment is against my 2 favorite enemies in the entire game, and once again we're going to work with ailments here. We burn the mage and then try to quickly take it down using technical Magarodines for our main means of damage. This works well, and once the first enemy is down, we can focus on the second one. At first I figured stun plus technical would work best here, but putting it down with a stun gun and then follow up with a concentrated blazing hell might even do more damage overall. Either way, it's not long until the second enemy is down as well, and we are already finished with part 1 of the palace. Up next, we need to head up Mementos, but since there is literally nothing noteworthy to mention in this segment, we can just skip ahead to the point where the party reaches the top floor and deactivates the barrier in the palace. With nothing else to do in our free time, we head back into the palace on the next day and then have to go through part 2. During fusion alarms, we are already starting to get the skills we want onto our personas for the final boss battle later on. The plan is for Addis to become our main magic persona, while we're going to teach Yadayu Charge and Myriad Slashes to deal big physical damage once the tentacles are down. We also try to get Ali Dance on everybody to increase their chance of dodging while we're at it. The first mini-boss battle here is against Cert. Since there is no proper way to damage the boss via weakness or anything, we just throw out freeze sprays and then follow up with technical damage via Myriad Slashes that we just carried over before. The enemy has a fixed attacking pattern of usually casting Gigantomachia, Blazing Hell and then Atomic Flare. For this reason, I decided to switch into Moloch eventually since it absorbs fire, so the incoming damage should be easier manageable this way. Since Moloch can't properly hit technical damage after a freeze, we don't do a lot of damage, but with the absorbed fire, we're at least safe from most of the incoming damage, since Blazing Hell usually out-heals the other attacks. We just continue on throwing freeze sprays until the enemy is down, and with that, we only have one more mini-boss left with Siegfried. Unlike Cert, he can be inflicted with all kinds of ailments and isn't really immune to anything but physical attacks, so we just throw a Molotov cocktail and then follow up with big technical damage from a Garudine. We switch into Addis to make sure we can't get wiped thanks to the Enduring Soul and beat the enemy just a few attacks later. With Siegfried being the last mini-boss of the game, the path to the final boss fight of the challenge is free, so we just need to kill some more time until we get there. Like mentioned earlier, there is basically nothing to do anymore, so we just go to bed early and skip forward to the point where we hand the calling card over to Maruki before heading back into the palace for one final time. We equip the weird wrap armor we got from Iwai's Mementos request early in the game for Null Fear, and also the Saint Hermeline's badge for Null Bless and Curse. We only have one persona in Yadayu who resists bless attacks, and considering that we have heals, buffs and attacks covered on our personas anyways, I figured this is probably the most useful accessory to go with here. Now the strategy against Maruki for the most part is relatively simple. Get rid of all the tentacles and then do big damage to Azathoth. To make sure we can wipe all tentacles at once though, we need to use a proper setup, which obviously involves casting Heat Riser to increase our attack, cleaning sprays to decrease everybody's defense, and a charge to deal maximum damage to Azathoth once the tentacles are down. In phase 1, the tentacles always have the same elemental affinities, so this is rather easy to go for. Once Azathoth grows and we hit phase 2 though, their weaknesses change, and here is where I made a mistake. For some reason I thought that with fire and blast damage we can cover everything, but looking at this tentacle right here, that is seemingly not the case. And now that I think about it, I think we ran into the very same issues with the Councillor Arcana as well, so this looks like a reset since we ditched Magarudine on Yadayu for the physical skill setup that we use. Luckily we can easily get it back, and once we fixed our mistake, we go back into battle for attempt number 2. Or maybe not quite so, because I didn't save after changing up Joker's equipment, so we reset again, do the actual equipment changes, and now we can go back at it again. With the correct setup, we can go through everything like initially planned, so let's take a quick look at the strategy. First of all, we charge up with Yadayu, then renew our Heat Riser and cleaning sprays for our buffs and debuffs, and then we can go on the attack. With Blazing Hell or Makuga on an Addis, we can get rid of the first couple of tentacles, then we switch into Yadayu from our Garudine to get rid of the last ones, and with all tentacles down, we can deal big damage to Azathoth with charged Myriad Slashes. And that is basically the entire strategy. In terms of incoming damage, Literally the only regular attack that can damage us is Raining Seeds, and even on that one we have a 20% chance to reflect the damage thanks to high counter. Eternal Radiance is negated by the St. Hermeline's badge, and the Fear of Evil Smile is blocked by the weird rap we got from Iwai's momentous request. And yeah, that is practically the entire battle. In past Arcana runs, we often talked about how trolly this battle can be with status elements, or how the lack of physical skills gives us trouble when it comes to damaging Maruki in time, but the Hanged Man overall has a really solid range of skills that all make this battle much easier. We don't even have to worry about the Tyrant's Chaos special attacks since we can easily guard through the damage, and even if we couldn't, we got both Enduring Soul and Enduranatus, so we have 2 more safety anchors just in case things go terribly wrong. And that's pretty much all for this boss fight. We just continue on like this until we hit the final blow on Maruki, and with that the challenge is practically won. As in every other solo Choker Arcana run, we're allowed to throw items in phase 3 with the other party members to get through the battle fast enough, and since phase 4 is scripted, the challenge is basically over once we bop Maruki on the head with our gun, and then throw some hands to finish everything off. And that is it, everybody. We beat Persona 5 Royal using only the Hanged Man Arcana. And I gotta be honest, this was a really solid run throughout basically the entire game. We had a few minor hiccups here and there, especially around Okumura, but other than that, this was probably one of the easier solo Arcana runs until now. We got access to the first Hanged Man persona relatively early into the game, and with the amount of persona options we got, we had a big spread of all kinds of skills ranging from several different elements including a booster and passive, strong physical skills, Endure as well as Enduring Soul and Salvation to free up our accessory slot. Now looking at the tier list, I am not quite sure where to put him. Until now, I would think that the Hanged Man was definitely the strongest solo Choker Arcana we have done so far, but I'm not sure if it was good enough to go into B tier. I figured B tier would probably be reserved for the badly performing party member Arcanas, so for now, I think we will still put the Hanged Man into C tier, though it's on the very first spot in that tier since it did better than both the Councillor and the Tower. We're now 6 Arcanas into the challenge, and with us having done 2 solo Choker runs now, I think we can go for another party member Arcana again, so let me know in the comments which party member you would like to see join Choker next time around. With that being said, special thanks go out to this video's top channel supporters Novarel, Shirker, Matthew Frack, Chipsel Naga, Whitehack, FerdyC25 and Mr. Sandman, as well as all other channel members and patrons. Becoming a channel member or joining the Patreon gives you 48-hour early access to all videos among other small perks, so if you want to support the channel even more, there are plenty of ways to do so. That is all from me today. I hope you enjoyed the run as much as I did, and I hope to see you all next time as well. Until then, take care.